you. Now, we've already got our first question from the community. Greetings from Costa Rica. Percy, what is the best practice to keep your data, your personal data, private?
That's a good question. I love Costa Rica, by the way, so this is fun. The best practice to keep your data private, I would say, is be careful where you share your data. So my thing is, you don't want to put something out there or, on the internet or whatever that you can't control. So I had a situation recently where I was talking to someone and they had a bit of information that maybe they shared with one person and that person shared it with someone else, and they didn't really like that. But the issue is, if you don't have to put it on the internet, definitely don't put it on the internet. Be careful about the things that you share. Really think about it. An example would be, oh, I'm going on vacation next week. So that may be a situation where someone will say, oh my God, let's go rob this person's house. Or let's say that you have a password that you use all the time, and maybe you put it on a Post-it note and it's on your computer. Someone can say, well, let's use this person's password and try all these different services. And a lot of people, unfortunately, reuse passwords. So you may have opened yourself up for something like identity theft just by, having your Post-it note or your password on your computer. So just try to find ways that, really think it through about the types of data sharing that you're doing, who you're sharing the data with, and being able to minimize when you can. Or, even like me, like I use Amazon a lot. So a lot of times I don't go on independent other sites because I'm like, do I really want to share my data with some other person, or other company? So I sort of think about that.
Right. So now if I was, and just to kind of continue that conversation, so what would be the top 5 things you'd recommend for someone like maybe starting out, how to protect their privacy? For example, like one would be like VPN, right? Having a VPN portal. What would be those other things you'd recommend?
So probably do not reuse passwords. So if you use a certain login and password to one service, don't use it somewhere else. Because if someone breaches your information or they think that they know your password, they may try it at these different services. So if you're using the same thing, they can break into other accounts. Another thing I would say is I highly recommend that people get a password manager. So if you get a password manager, some have free services. I recommend that you pay for it, because if you pay for it, you have more rights about what happens with your data, right? If you get a password manager, some of them, they let you log into your account without having to retype your password, or they'll suggest like a tougher password that maybe you wouldn't have been able to come up with, and to change passwords. That's a thing that I highly recommend. Also, like I know a lot of people use Google Drive or Dropbox and stuff like that. Make sure that you're not sharing those passwords with other people, and that you're changing those passwords relatively often. So like say every 3 months, every 6 months. Definitely try to change, those passwords just in case there's a breach. If Dropbox has a breach, if you have a breach, if you're changing those passwords more often, it will make you less vulnerable. Probably maybe the last thing, I don't know if I've said 5 already, but I would highly recommend, especially on accounts that are very sensitive in nature, like your financial stuff, that you take advantage of 2-factor authentication if it's offered. A lot of cyber criminals, they look for people who are the low-hanging fruit. So they're looking for people who aren't, who are reusing passwords. They're looking for people who aren't careful about how they share their data. So those people are easier to hack than someone that has 2-factor authentication. So being, you don't want to be the low-hanging fruit. So do what you can to not be like sort of the person that's the easiest access or easiest target for a hacker.
Right. And I think I want to add on, doesn't some of those services with the password managers have a dark web scanner as well? They're scanning the dark web to make sure.
They do. Right. They do. So it's not a plug or anything, but one of the ones that I use and have used for a long time is Keeper. And I like it I like it because it doesn't try to force you to do it one way or another. So you can use it just to have a list of your passwords on there, or you can decide at a later. You could decide if you wanted to log you into stuff, and then you could decide if you wanted to help you come up with a more difficult password and stuff like that. So